Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome to the Happy Hour Garage, featuring a duo of racing gals who live for the thunder of horsepower, the smell of high-octane fuel, and burning rubber at 200 miles an hour. They believe a day at the Speedway is like a day at the spa. Together, they bring you NASCAR news and interviews and get you ready for the races each week. And now, here's your hosts, Shannon Yoakum and Maureen Kelly from the Happy Hour Garage.
Gentlemen, start your engine.
Welcome to a Saturday night edition of the Happy Hour Garage. Hey, I'm your host, Shannon Yoakum, calling from beautiful British Columbia, though it's just starting to get dark now. And looks like some kind of weather coming up the lake, so could get a little snow here pretty quick, but you know, what a beautiful day. We saw lots of sunshine today, lots of deer roaming around the backyard, eating out of my bird feeder. Goddamn deer. My husband forgot to bring it in last night. Anyway, I'm here with my host, Maureen, my co-host, Maureen Kelly from Philadelphia. How you doing, Maureen?
I'm doing great. We've had some lovely weather here, enough to melt some of the 2 feet of snow. So that's working really well for me anyway.
Oh, God, you must be so sick of it. We actually had a blizzard last night, but it was a rainy blizzard. It just made everything white again, and by 8 o'clock it was melted again. But we still got a little bit of lingering effects from our last storm. But, I'm so looking forward to that Daytona. Nice warm weather, though. I'm watching the Rolex, and they tell me tonight it's going to get down to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not much different than here.
No, it's not. You know, it has to change quickly down there. It's been
better.
cold for, such a while now. It's so strange for Central and Southern Florida to be going through this.
They're
just waiting for you to arrive, son.
We always have good weather on our holidays, so
Exactly.
It's got we get rained out every time we go to the dirt race at Charlotte. It gets rained out to the next day, and we get soaked. But that's the only place that's ever. Oh, one time at Bristol too. But other than that, never. So I'm really hoping that I'll bring them some good weather. Hey, we got an interesting guest tonight. Wow, this man's got a long history, and no offense, in the racing world. He's currently the director of marketing and PR for ARCA, but that's just his latest gig. He's got all kinds of history here, then I can hardly wait for him to tell us about it. Please welcome on the show, Tom Legeman. Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Shannon, I'm doing great this evening. How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great, and man, I'm reading about you, and it's not easy to actually find information about you because you're one of those guys that's not always in the forefront of things until now, being the ARCA director. You're going to be right there in front of everybody. But in the past, you've kind of been, one of those guys behind the scenes, and most people probably don't know who you are. Why don't you tell us a little bit about where you started in racing? I mean, you've been around for a while.
A lot of years. I started in racing, really it was my dad that got us going. We used to go to the Indianapolis 500 every year. That was our family trip for me and my 3 brothers. And did that for a number of years. And then my oldest brother, Charlie, started racing. He started racing stock cars and sprint cars. I helped him out quite a bit through that time, built his engines for him, and was a crew chief for his car. And we progressed quite a bit. He got a chance to run Martinsville in a modified and did very well. We had hopes of coming back down south to go run for the both of us, but it didn't quite work out. And, I was out of racing for a little bit, came back in after that, and was able to work with Jamie Obie a little bit, who's a 3-time Busch North champion, and started doing more on the advertising and promotional, and had gotten my degree in advertising and journalism and started doing more PR and things like that. So as my career grew, was able to do some sponsorship and put those things together. For Jamie, 3 years in a row, I helped put sponsorship for him together to go run Daytona. And as those things progressed, started doing sponsorship for some more people here and there, and finally got my opportunity to move down to Charlotte back in 1999, and that's when things really took off.
You've been doing a lot of work too in the '90s with Team Pelfrey, right? The Indy with Robbie Unser and Sarah Fisher and Nemechek and Kenseth, Chris Buescher. I mean, you've been all those guys.
Did a lot. One of the things I used to do at the racetrack, besides doing PR and marketing, I would be a spotter, and I got that job by accident. One night, it was with Jamie Obie, and the spotter that he fired, and he came to me and said, "Well, you're going to spot tonight." And I said, "Jamie, I've never spotted before." And he goes, "Well, I've got 2 gas men, and you and another guy." And he says, "I don't need 2 gas men. I need a spotter." He says, "You'll do fine." So I spotted for him that night. We finished the race, and we finished pretty well. We finished top 5, and he says, "You're going to do it for me from here on out." So that was the start of my spotting career. That was about 1994. So that put me into the stands for a long, long time, about 20 years worth. And
wow.
Yeah, I got to spot for a lot of different drivers. In fact, we were going through a list last year. I've spotted for over 100 different drivers.
Oh my goodness!
Through the 20 years, yeah. So some of them excellent, some of them not so good, but it was always a challenge and always fun. Always enjoyed it.
Spotters are interesting. We interviewed Lauren Rainier a couple of weeks ago, and he was great. He was absolutely fascinating on the show, and it was interesting listening to hear about the spotter, because I know Maureen does this too. We both have Race View, and we listen to the individual drivers during a race. And I'm, of course, a huge Jeff Gordon fan, so Eddie DeHaan is my boy, right? I feel like I know Eddie like he's my brother, because you listen to this all the time with the spotter. You have a relationship with that. I mean, did you spot for Kenseth?
For Matt? No, I never did spot for Kenseth. I did put some sponsorship together for him when he was with John Reiser and drove there.
Oh, yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day. In 2002, John came to me and said, "Hey, we're running behind on sponsorship. Is there something that you can do for us?" So we worked real hard, and I was able to get Janny Kane together for about an 8-race deal for Matt. We went to Daytona, and one of those things, we dang near won the race. We ended up finishing second, but they had a great car, and the window neck came down. And it's always one of those things in racing. It's the little things that get you. Yep. Before the start of the race, Matt had complained about looking through the window net they had on, saying, "I can't see well enough. Can you grab the one off the short track car?" And they did, and it was just a little too loose, and with the wind flapping and the turbulence in the draft, it knocked the window net down. So we lost a lap. He made the lap back up, finished second to, as I remember, Dale Earnhardt Jr., but almost had a win that day, rolling right out of the gates with brand new sponsorship with Janny King. We had them on for 8 races, and that's what led John and Matt getting the sponsorship from Baird that they ran for several years on that car. So it was a good transition at that time.
And in that time frame, you stuck with the sponsorship deals, trying to put sponsorship deals together?
Yes. Yep.
And then, and were you available to a variety of teams, or were you working for a brand?
I was working for a number of different teams, and I was working at that time both in NASCAR and IndyCar. Along that time, just the year before that, 2 years before that, I had worked with Derek Walker and his team in IndyCar, and I approached Derek. Derek wanted to do an IndyCar team besides the team that he had in Champ Car or CART at that point. And I'd seen a little driver run in midgets and a little bit in the sprint cars by the name of Sarah Fisher.
Yeah, we all know her.
And I thought,
yep.
Oh yeah, and I thought she did a heck of a job. And I asked Derek. I said, "Derek," I said, "I'm going to run something by you." I said, "What about putting a female in the car?" And Derek said, "Mate, you must think I have 2 heads, because there's no way I'm going to put a female in that car." I said, I got a driver I want you to meet. Just give me 30 minutes of your time. So I was able to get Sarah over to Indianapolis, got her over there with her dad, and got her into Derek's office, and we talked more and more. And I know Derek, he was becoming more engaged and more engaged. And he was supposed to fly to Japan for the IndyCar race, and he actually delayed his trip and took the second flight over. And they all went out to dinner that night, and I left back to Charlotte because I think my job was done at that point. I knew that he was hooked, and he was going to put her in a race car. So
and look at her now.
Right.
Yeah, did a great job. And she her first race with Derek, they finished second at Homestead. Excuse me, the first race that they had sponsorship on it, they finished second at Homestead. And she just did a great job over there. And it was just one of those things. Tim Wachter from Procter & Gamble, who I'd gotten to know, I'd been pushing him for them to come on board and sponsor her. So we were able to put 8 brands that Procter & Gamble had onto her car and put the sponsorship together with Kroger. And we went out and ran those events, and the sponsorship ended up receiving a top 100 advertising marketing campaign award.
Oh, wow. Do you design the marketing campaign too? With them?
That worked on it. The nice thing is when you work with a group like Procter & Gamble and Kroger and all the resources they have, you can come up with ideas and they help implement it. And so between Tim, Cameron, and myself, the team, Steve Suther was there, Derek, we came up with some pretty good ideas. Tim was fantastic. He was able to get them implemented all the way through P&G. I'll give you an example. We said, well, gosh, we'd like to do something with some shows. And we'd like to get Sarah and the team on some shows besides racing shows. And so we went to Edelman, who does a lot of work, Edelman PR, who does a lot of work with P&G. And they said, well, what show would you like to be on? I said, well, what do you have a suggestion? So they said, well, how about we do NBC Nightly News? And I said, but the Indy 500 is going to be on ABC. And I said, not a problem. And we watched them make a call, and they called NBC Nightly News. And if you remember, Sarah was on NBC Nightly News as a feature leading up to the Indy 500 that was going to be on ABC. And
wow.
And I forget her name, but the gal at Edelman said, Tom, when you spend about $400 million a year with anyone, they'll usually listen to you and get you where you need to be. So it was the power of a large company, 2 large companies, and it sure made our jobs a lot easier. But the credits to Tim Wachter, the job that he did in putting the whole thing together on his end. He saw the vision, and that was just it made everything fall into place.
Wow. you know, it's hard for mere mortals to even think about, Procter & Gamble. They're so huge that, and to take a chance on somebody like Sarah Fisher, who, women in racing weren't really, going together very well. But look at Danica. I mean, with GoDaddy, it just, wow. Marketing genius.
Yeah. Well, it turned out very well, but you just never know. But the nice thing is they saw our vision and were able and took a chance on it. And it's not often you can get a big company to do that, but
no,
we were able to get that through.
What's the secret? What was the magical word that got you there? Like, how did you get that?
Luck. I mean, a lot of it was luck. Tim worked very hard. We had to get 8 different brand managers to sign off on the whole program, and it was through Tim's work. Tim worked very hard for 2 to 3 days in a row walking the halls at P&G to get them to sign off, to see the vision and get them to sign off. And it goes back to sales. All the products that were on the car were set up as end cap promotions during race weeks coming up to various Kroger stores within about a 250-mile radius of the race market. So it just turned into a fantastic promotion. It turned into sales for them. They were extremely happy with the sales that they got out of the program. Unfortunately, the reason the program wasn't renewed was we were working very hard to get it renewed. And the week that we were supposed to get it renewed is when 9/11 hit. Oh. And that just changed everything at that point. As a matter of fact, I was getting ready to board a plane to go up and and discuss the renewal at that point, and it just it changed the whole outlook.
Are they based out of New York?
They're based out of Cincinnati,
Ah,
but it just changed the whole economy and the way they were looking at it. It's just an issue of timing.
wow.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
Yeah, that makes sense when you think about it. And what other larger entities have you been able to bring on board into NASCAR or into racing at all? Into
racing.
Even, yeah.
We worked very hard with Chanikin to get a small race program there. I worked at Blair Corporation for about 3 years, and Blair is a catalog clothing company that we worked with. Their goal at that point to get into racing, and they were both in a combination of NASCAR and IndyCar. And Todd Hayes worked on the program as well. Todd, I don't know if you know, he's now the CEO of LifeLock. Todd worked hard on the IndyCar end, and I worked with him on that. I worked very hard on the NASCAR end. And we were able to take Blair from having about a 3% presence on the internet up to about 19.5%.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
go.
I remember when that jumped like that.
Yeah.
What is LifeLock? I don't think it's a Canadian thing.
No, LifeLock that where Todd works right now, that is for essentially a company that protects your information
Right.
that you have on the internet, all your personal information, and they guarantee that they will help make sure that nobody is committing any credit fraud against you with your personal information when you go to buy things, credit cards and things like that. So they help secure that. It's a membership fee, and
Right.
Todd I worked with at Blair, and then he went off to start that company, and he did very well. He's doing very well still today. But Blair was another one that we worked with, and worked with them for 3 years, and they did they were a great group of people. Jim McCullough was there. He has been in the apparel business for a lot of years and worked directly with Jim, and they were just an enjoyable group to work with, and we were able to help them take care of their initiatives and their goals of getting more than 10% sales on the internet. And by the time we got done and worked with them, they were up to almost 20% sales on the internet.
Wow.
So they ended up, we did such a good job, they ended up getting bought up by a private equity firm, which put us out of business. But
Jeez.
they're a great company, and still today are in business.
I guess that's the end goal. I mean, when you were working, I just want to step back a little bit with Sarah Fisher there.
Mm-hmm.
When you were working with her, I mean, you have a racing background, so it's not like you're, a marketing only guy. You understand racing. What was that like with her? Because I mean, she was just starting out. I mean, now she's famous for owning her own team and a successful one at that. But
Very.
what did you see back then in her?
I saw the potential. Look, when I saw her, she's a race car driver who happens to be female, and but she was a race car driver first, and I just saw an incredible amount of talent that you just rarely see in a driver. There's look, either drivers have it or they don't, and when they come up, you'll see some things in which it gives you an idea tendency-wise, and this is one of the advantages of being in the spotter stand sometimes. It's almost like being an offensive coordinator at a football game. You get to see the whole playing field, and you can judge how good a driver is and things that they do. Maybe they're not in optimal equipment, but you'll see some things that you'll go, man, that guy's got some talent, and he can really do some things. She just had a really good amount of talent. I remember we were at Colorado Springs, and she just made some moves in the midget passing on the high side and the low side that was really incredible. And knowing that she was driving the family midget, but it wasn't necessarily one of the top midget teams that were out there, and going against some of the big guys that you saw that she had the talent to make it, and let's give her a shot.
Yes. Yeah, and
we did.
She's amazing now. I mean, she's a businesswoman and still a race car driver to some extent, but she's very well respected in the Indy paddock.
She she's a very passionate person about racing and about life. And I'm going to tell you something. When I met her at 18 years of age, she laid it out for me. She said, I'm going to race till I'm 29. At that point, I'd like to be an owner and start a family. And to have the vision of what she wanted in life at a young age, that was incredible to me. And she's achieved all the goals that she said she wanted to achieve up to that point. And incredible driver. And it's a lot of pressure, even more so back then when we started, on a female driver. The one thing that I learned about working with a female driver in a program is that you have to have 100% buy-in on the crew. Otherwise, it will not be successful. And I think with a female driver, they have so much pressure on them because they are so much scrutiny on them. They feel that, and it's not an easy world to drive in for them. So I have a lot of respect for the ones that do it. I have a lot of respect for Danica and what she does, and it's just, I don't think until you get behind the scenes you realize how much they do have on them to succeed.
Oh no, I think you're absolutely correct. Now, I mean, Danica is, I see her more as a marketing dream, as opposed to a driving dream. I don't, to be honest, this is my own opinion, I don't believe that Danica has the talent that Sarah had or has. At least it's never been, she's had really, really, really top equipment, and we really haven't seen her perform with that equipment. She might have been better off staying in open wheel. I don't know. But she is a marketing dream.
To Tom's point just there, Tom, you said something about the whole team being behind, with the female driver. You're battling so many battles there for a number of stupid reasons, but nonetheless, they're there. Do you think maybe that's the problem?
With Danica, the thing with Danica, I think, is half of it's chemistry and half of it is seat time. I've seen her do well at tracks you never would expect, like at Martinsville. She always does well at Martinsville.
Yeah, she does good.
And
there.
to me, that's a driver's track. I don't care who you are.
And Daytona.
You got to have some talent if you get around Martinsville. Daytona, she does well in the super speedways. She struggles at times on the mile-and-a-half tracks, but so do a lot of drivers. But I've seen things on the short tracks that, coming from IndyCar and not coming from a real short track background, you wouldn't anticipate her to do well at places like Martinsville.
No.
And she does, and that shows where the skill is. I think that it's a combination of things. I think she is a driver who would benefit greatly if she ran an Xfinity program along with her Cup program and raced on Saturdays and used that experience on Sunday. I think you would see her advance 5 or 6 positions in her Sunday race and really have a handle on it. And I think it's just a matter of consistent seat time in those big cars. And that's the biggest challenge that she has had. She's had bright points, hasn't been quite able to break through. And I think it's just a matter of getting the chemistry with the crew as well. And maybe in her case, not putting herself in a mold that she doesn't fit. And what I mean by that is that sometimes female drivers, sometimes drivers in general, put themselves in a class that well, I'm the best female driver out there. And I think that's incorrect to do that. I think every driver should approach it that I'm the best driver, period. Whatever I happen to be. I mean, I think Rico Abreu looks at himself as I'm the best driver out there.
Yeah.
Bubba Wallace looks at himself, I'm the best driver out there. Sarah always approached it that I'm the best race car driver out there. And we'd had that conversation one time, and it got her fired up pretty well. She dang near won the Michigan 500 because of that. But you have to approach this that I'm not the best female driver or, best driver of ethnicity out there. You have to take that I'm the best driver out there and work very hard to build your crew around you and make them believe you're the best and put in the extra hours and go forward and not just an also ran. And it's very difficult to do that. It's even harder for a female to do that. But once you get that chemistry, and it goes, it's magic to watch. It really is.
I'm sure.
For any driver.
I'm sure you know who Sarah Corniching is.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Well, she's from my.
Spoke to her the other day, as a matter of fact.
She's from my area here,
Yes.
and she is. I call her a marketing dream. I mean, I work for a company called Home Hardware. If you were involved with Cascar back in the day with Jay Robinson and Premium Motorsports, so you know who Home Hardware is, and Don Thompson and all that. And when Don Thompson went to retire, I tried really hard because I had some really good contacts at the top end of Home Hardware to get them to sponsor her here. And unfortunately, I was not quite successful, much to my chagrin, but I tried my butt off to get her to get Home Hardware to sponsor her because they had put a lot of money with Don and had 8 friggin' championships. I mean, the guy was a marketing dream as far as winning. He just wasn't great on the radio, or he stuttered and stammered a lot because he was nervous, and it was just a thing he had. But Sarah, we've had Sarah on the show lots of times because she's from my hometown ish.
Yeah.
She is a marketing dream and has the talent to back it up. And she ran ARCA last year, and of course this year she's moving into K&N. So as a marketing guy in ARCA, you're losing her there. But what do you think about her?
I think she does a great job. She'll be running some of our races. She
yes.
had been down to test, and she's entered the 2-car for Daytona.
Yep.
So we'll definitely see her at Daytona, and I think selected races. And I think she's got the potential. Again, it's just for her putting the amount of money to get into the right equipment and put the team together and to make it go. But she's got the potential. Definitely, she's got the potential to go. It's just a matter of putting the dollars and cents together. And that is, as hard as racing is, sometimes that can be the hardest thing of all, is putting the funding together to go make it go.
Well, we hear that all the time, right? I mean, you could be the best driver in the world and be in crappy equipment. And like you made a good point there about being a spotter and seeing all that you recognize, and I think true fans do too, that person driving around the track. Chris Buescher is a good example of that.
Great.
That they have a heck of a lot of talent. And Kyle Larson, another one. I mean, Kyle Larson's one of the few that has gotten a ride without bringing a sponsor to things. And as a marketing guy versus a spotter guy versus a racing guy, how do you look at all those kinds of things?
Look, if you're putting a program together, talent, if you want to be competitive, talent is so important.
It is.
It is so important. And there's things that you can work with the driver. And you mentioned the driver you were mentioning before didn't do well on camera. There are things you can teach and people can pick up. You can send them to media school to how to speak on the camera, how to greet people. And a lot of the short track drivers, especially those that come from USAC, do a lot of trackside interviews. And they seem to be pretty well trained by the time they get up to the NASCAR Truck Series, Xfinity Series, or Cup Series. And sometimes Chris, when we were coming along, I mean, he was a very shy young man, and he's opened up quite a bit. And he has such a wonderful personality. It's great to see. To see him from when I started spotting for him when he was with Rulo Brothers, who are a great team. Chris was 15 years of age, and to see him into the young man that he is today and all that he's done, and to understand that when he started, he really didn't know anything about the actual race cars he was driving, and now he can build one from the ground up. He knows his knowledge is so huge on those cars and how they operate, and the Rulos taught him a lot on hard work and ethics, and how you want to be in the car and how you want to represent yourself. And he did such a fantastic job. Kyle Larson, the same thing. He drove for the Hoffmans, who I know the Hoffmans. They're very good friends of mine. Tim Wachter, actually, from Procter & Gamble. He's retired, and he runs with the Hoffmans now on the sprint car series after he retired from Procter & Gamble. And Richard told me, he's been around. The family's had they've won numerous sprint car titles. Heck, I think they're up to 8 or 9 now, sprint car championships, maybe even 10 they've won in USAC. And they've had A.J. Foyt, Jim Hurtubise. They've had all the greats go through their cars. Vogler drove for them for a lot of years in that 69 car. And Richard told me that Kyle at 18 was one of the best drivers he's ever had in his race car. And the thing that really impressed him is that Kyle would go out and walk the track on his own before the race week, before the race night. He'd go back and talk to the local drivers about where the good groove is. He was just such a good student of the sport. And he says when he got into that car, he had a pretty good knowledge of what he was going to do for racing. He would always try to follow one of the top dogs at that particular track to learn how to get around. And he says, boy, by the heat races, he was ready to go. And he's always been a good student of the sport, and I think that's such a key. Richard Jackson taught me something, and when I first came down south, and he told me, always be a good student of this sport, and you will always do well in racing. And those are words that I've always followed, and I see Kyle Larson, he's followed it. Chris has followed that. Sarah Fisher followed those words, and it's just great to see what's happened with them through their years.
Both those guys really impressed me, and let me talk about one at a time here. But Chris Buescher, he's a perfect example. Yeah, he was shy. We had him on our show a couple times, and he always came on, and he was very forthcoming. If you asked him the right question, he would go, but you had to kind of, nudge him along. This was pre-championship, way back, and he was I always found him kind of interesting because that he's not really comfortable talking on the mic or in front of the cameras or whatever, but he understood how important it was, and he really worked hard at it. Like that kid, he really impresses me, and I think he's going to really do well this year. And Kyle Larson impresses me beyond anything I can even comprehend. All the years I've been racing my whole life, and I'm well into my 50s. And when I saw him, I thought, that kid is magic. He's magical. And once he determines in Sprint Cup, Sprint Cup, that it's a 500-mile race and not a 50-lap dash or a 300-lap Xfinity race. Once that kid understands that, because he is having a little bit of trouble with that, and with the new crew chief this year, maybe that'll fix that, but who knows. He's my new Jeff Gordon.
He is. He is very much so. And I think racing, to me, in a lot of ways, race car drivers, it's a lot like baseball and some other sports. And I think hockey, that a lot of your great players don't mature until they get into their mid-20s, into their 30s. Mm-hmm. And it's having those seasons underneath them. And Kyle, I think this year, after having a couple of years in Cup now and a couple of years of Xfinity underneath him, these are the times that you look and you're going, this guy's got to have a breakout season here pretty quick. He's been knocking on that door. I remember at California where he ran that top groove all day long and about stole a race here.
He's so good at top.
Jeff Gordon paid him a great compliment going, man, he says, I was convinced that kid was going to wreck every time he'd drive in there. Yep. And he would save it. He says he saved it lap after lap after lap. And he did. And he's just got such a great feel. Chris Buescher, the same thing. When he went to drive for Front Row the first race last year, after Brian Vickers got sick again and had to stay out of the car, it caused a little bit of shakeup in the back of the field, so to speak. Drivers were moving around here and there to go cover those rides. And Chris got his opportunity to go run for Front Row, and Chad Finley was his crew chief. And I told Chad, I said, look, the kid's really good. I said, you're going to be amazed. And after the California race, Chad grabbed me. We were in a restaurant at Martinsville, and he says, Tom, I didn't realize how good he was. He says he was in one of our oldest cars, and he finished on the lead lap. And he says, if I'd known that, I would have given him another car. Because a lot of times when you don't know a driver, and it's no discredit to them, you bring out a car that you go, well, the kid's got to learn. And if he wrecks it, it's not going to hurt us in our overall fleet if this car gets totaled. And he probably gave Chris the oldest car in the fleet, and he finished the best at all of those cars. and more impressive, but in his first Cup race, he finished on the lead lap. So that just tells me, he's got the talent. Chad was certainly impressed. And those are two names that you're going to see definitely in the future in Victory Lane and Cup and for years to come. They're now the new generation of drivers coming in through NASCAR.
How about Cole Custer? Where would you see him falling into any of those plans there?
Well, heck, he's a fine talent, and
he's a very talented driver.
He's done such a great job, and he's just such a fine young man. And
Shy.
We'll just have to see as he gets up into the Xfinity level, how he does. I think he'll do fine, but he needs seat time right now. He's going to come to the ARCA Series and run some races, which we're we're extremely impressed. Yeah, we like that. I know his dad, and just great people. They've been around racing a long time, and I think he'll do well. But I hate to put the curse on him and say, oh, he's going to make it the Cup for sure until they do, But he's at that age where he seems to absorb a lot quickly, which is a good sign. When he goes to a new track, he seems to get a pretty good handle on it, and they're doing the right thing in how they're bringing him up through. You don't want to bring a driver up too fast. You want to make sure they get enough time.
Yeah, look at Joey Logano.
I so agree. Yeah.
Joey Logano is a perfect example of that.
Right.
Yeah, he is, and there's a lot. When you get to the upper ends of the sport, and again, I'll use baseball. It's like coming up through single A ball, double A, triple A ball, then finally you make the show. There is so much more that you have to learn besides just driving a race car, and it can be overwhelming for a young driver. As drivers mature, it becomes easier and easier, but there's so much more that you have to handle for the load. There's sponsor commitments, there's team commitments, making sure you have that communication with your team. There's just so much that you have that people don't realize. It's a 24/7 job. And for a young person, it can be quite overwhelming for them until they mature and they learn how to manage it and have people around them that help manage it for them and delegate and make everything work. So
right. Well, Cole has good people around him, and I think
he's got great people.
Right, and that's key too. I mean, when I look at some of these drivers, and I you can almost separate, the drivers who don't really have that. It's not the professional people around you. It's the actual team that that you're close to, right. Where you're getting your information from and all. That's really the important thing. Cole seems to have that. Who else are you looking forward to watching in the ARCA season this year?
Got a couple drivers that we'll have coming forward for the 22 car and the 77 car, Cunningham Motorsports. Kevin Thomas is coming on board. He's a very fine midget racer, as is Chase Briscoe, and they'll be coming on board and running the majority of the season. Look forward to that. Tom Hessert. Tom's going to be driving for Venturini Motorsports this year. Tom's a veteran.
Yeah.
They'll put together a championship effort. And I think they'll be ones that you'll have to look for. Matt Krajewski, he's going to be driving for Kenny Schrader this year. Mm-hmm. And Matt did a great job last year in his own car and coming on board with Kenny and the sponsorship program that they've put together over there. I think that they'll be title contenders. One of my favorites is Josh Williams. I think that young man did a great job last year, considering it was he and two other guys that put those race cars together and didn't have an extra dime for anything and traveled around and made it work and finished very well in the points last year in the top 5. And he's got a crew chief this year, so that'll take some of the pressure off. He won't have to make the crew chief calls in the car anymore. He can concentrate a little more on driving, and I think they'll be title contenders as well. Kyle Weatherman, he was the Scott's Rookie of the Year last year.
Right, yes.
He'll be with Lyra Motorsports, and I think if you look historically, the rookies of the year. If they come back the next year, they do very well at ARCA. And in a lot of cases, they win that championship. So he'll be a contender as well. So we've got a great group of young drivers. We have the old veterans going into Daytona. There's Bobby Gerhart, who's looking to win another, Lucas Oil 200. And of course, he'd love to win that for his sponsor, Lucas, at that point. And he'll be a contender at Daytona, and he's always a joy to have around all year on our series. So between the young guns and the old veterans, it's a great mix. It's a great series, and I'm
the
very
Kimmels.
proud to.
Don't forget the Kimmels.
Oh, and I'll tell you, they've had to work very hard. Bill Kimmel at the test, unfortunately, both his cars got caught up in some oil and wrecked. And they've worked feverishly to get both cars put together. Will Kimmel will be back in. And Will did a great job in the Cup car, I thought, in his debut last year over with Archie Sennelaire in that 32 car. He'll be back, and they'll have a good run at Daytona. And always look forward to the Kimmels. And then there's rumors. I don't know if Frank's going to be at Daytona or not, but I'm hearing rumors that maybe Frank.
I've been hearing the rumors too. Yep. I've been hearing them as well.
You're going to the race, aren't you, Sean?
Yeah, I will
be.
I will be there. Absolutely. Sarah's going to race in that, so I'll be cheering loudly for her. What are this new job of yours, this ARCA director? What are your goals?
Wherever I can assist the series in improving the product, and that's a combination of things. Don Radebaugh has been with ARCA for 20 years, and he sets out all the press releases. Whatever I can do to assist Don to get our messages out there for our team members. Mark Gundrum, he was the one that approached me back in Pocono about coming on board. Mark's the vice president of sales and business development, and he's the one that goes out and helps bring the sponsorship on board for the series, which overall helps the teams. The more money we have, the more money we have to pay out to the teams at races and for contingency awards. And my role is to assist him in the activation of those programs, and also to help him wherever I can on the sales end of it, whatever we have leads. So I'm a go-between, doing what I usually do, wear a lot of different hats and just keep the ball rolling downfield. And every day I've been in there, it's been a joy. Ron Drager's great to work with, the whole competition department, Joe Wells, Grayling Call, Bobby Thompson. We've got a really good group of people in there, and I'm really excited for what we're going to have for 2016 and years to come. We have General Tires on board now. That is our new tire for the series. It's the first time in the history of the series that we've had a tire that is a consumer brand involved with the series. So there's going to be some announcements coming on that, some very nice things that I think people will be impressed with. And so far, so good on the partnership we've had with them, just even through the test. What a great group of people, and we're really encouraged about what they're going to bring to the series for 2016 and years to come as well.
And of course, was it last year or the year before they introduced the crate motor to try and even out the field? I mean, it used to be all Venturini. Now I don't get ARCA anymore. I have to watch it illegally online. But it used to be you'd have like 10 or 12 cars at the front and everybody else. Do you think that this new tire combined with the crate motor is going to even out the field a little bit?
Yes, I think it already has. And Ron Drager and I were talking not too long ago, and we were speaking of how we haven't heard too much grumbling from the competitors, as far as the engine goes.
Well, that's good.
Which is a very good sign, because when car owners don't say anything, yeah. When car owners are silent, it usually means they like a program. They won't tell you they like it, because from the series I've learned, and you got to remember, I'm working for the series now. Before, yes. I was always working on the team end. So for my end of it, when I was working on the team end, you never want to let the series know, because you're afraid they'll raise your entry fees or something like that, which these guys haven't done. But they, there's been silence on them, which on the end of the car owners, which usually tells you the program's worked out. And and some of the owners have come up and said it's really worked out well. And when you look at what your engine bill used to be in ARCA, especially on the super speedways, and what it is now, it's changed it quite a bit. And all those engines are within 3% when they're new. As you get a little mileage on them, yeah, they'll lose some. But what's happened is now is that there's enough motors that are into the series that now some of your teams have gone and sold their used engines and are buying new for this year, your top teams. Some of your teams that are in your secondary market, say, they run 15th to 20th, are buying those engines to go run. So what's happening is the back of the field, it's raising the quality of the competition for those that are running in the back of the field. And now basically they've got the same motor as the guys have up front within a closer percentage. So it's really tightened up the field. Our car counts are up 7%. I think they're going to be up even more. You talk about Lauren Ranier. He's going to have two teams that are going to compete in ARCA on a part-time basis. Since he's made the transition from spotter stand to ownership, carrying on the family tradition. And there's some other teams that have a lot of interest that are looking to run partial schedules. So I think we always have a lot of cars at Daytona, but I'm really looking forward to the short tracks like Winchester and Salem, and even to Iowa, where I think we're going to have strong car counts on the short tracks and stronger cars in those counts, and have really good shows to put on this year. Very encouraged.
Do you tell me something I've always sort of wondered, and I haven't quite been able, as a longtime race person, figured this out. ARCA versus K&N.
Say that again.
ARCA versus K&N as a feeder to, like all race car drivers want a racing cup. Bottom line, they all do. There's no brain about that. And I see some start in ARCA, some go in K&N. What do you think from a marketing guy and a racing guy? Like you basically wear two hats. So what's your opinion on that?
I think K&N's a great series to start in, and I think you really is a basis for a race car driver if you're looking to go to the top levels. You have to have. There's three disciplines in racing, really, in stock car racing anymore. You have your super speedways and your intermediate tracks. You have your road courses, and you have your short tracks. And you have to be pretty good in all three to make it to the top levels. I mean, when you look at when you go to the road courses, there's no such thing as ringers anymore in Cup.
Oh, God, no.
No way.
It's not like it used to be 10 years ago, and that's because of the quality of drivers now that are coming up through the lower series. When you run K&N, you run road courses. When you run ARCA, you do run a road course here. And then when you get to Xfinity, you're running several. So I think that you need to craft your three disciplines in the lower series. K&N's a series that's always going to run a mile or under, and that's fantastic. And it's side-by-side, short-track, hard racing with big, heavy cars. And it gives you that good feel that you're going to need to go to tracks like Bristol and Martinsville and those places as your career grows, and Phoenix. ARCA, where we take the places, we still have a good short track program, but we're the next step in the sense of now you learn about how to run the intermediate tracks and the super speedways. And you need that, and you need to learn those in those areas, and you can make mistakes in those areas without a lot of people seeing it. And you can grow from that before then you go into trucks. And I think trucks are still a necessary step through your career, then into Xfinity, and then finally into Cup.
Yeah, that makes more sense. It makes more sense. I watched the ARCA cars last year at Pocono, for instance, and that's a totally different type of course as well. I mean, if a driver skips one of these levels, like the level that says you should try to race against people at the ARCA level, with being the same as almost as K&N there, if you don't, I think that's where the problem lies when we see some of these like 15-year-olds that, somebody puts in a truck and everybody wants to know, why isn't that kid in there for an entire season? Part of the reason is because they've never really had good competition at a course the size of Pocono, or some of the longer tracks that ARCA runs at. It's not
Right.
a step they should skip.
No, I fully agree. And I'm going to give you an example. Used to work with TJ Bell. And TJ's a very talented driver. And he came out of sports cars and open wheel cars. And that's always the hardest transition to make is into stock cars because it's such a difference in how the car feels when you're driving it. And he ran, about 14 or 15 truck races back in 2003. And he really only had enough money for 7. They scratched some money together to get a few more races out of it. But I had told him that I really wanted to see him run ARCA first before he got in the truck series. And he had some brilliant moments in the truck series, but he also had some moments where he really struggled. And the problem is so many eyeballs were on him during the struggle, people write you off right away. And it's like that in a lot of other sports. Can't make it. If you don't learn your craft and manage your craft and become proficient in it in the lower levels. So the next year, I put him together with Jeff McClure, and we struck a deal right before Daytona, and for 15 races of ARCA. And heck, midway through the season, they were third in points. And they couldn't give it up, so they ended up running the remaining 7 races and finished second in the points. And he received the Rookie of the Year, and just had a few little hiccups in finishing towards the second part of the year. That if he had finished in the positions he was running before he had a little bit of trouble, he would have beaten Kimmel that year for the championship. So it was a great learning experience for him running all 22 races. But it really revived his career and enabled him to make the jump to go run for the up into Xfinity that year in trucks and some others. And he still gets rides in Xfinity, and he does a great job there. And he ran a cup race last year or two, and but he became a very proficient driver and one that people recognized. And I'm telling you, in 2003, they wouldn't have given 2 cents for him. After what he did in 2004 in the ARCA series, it revitalized his career. So it's a necessary step to follow if you can. Come into the K&N series, then go run the ARCA series, then trucks, then Xfinity, and hopefully you're ready for Cup, and there's a seat for you at that time if you jump through all the hoops.
Yeah, and hopefully that there's some owners who still are working in this. I did want to ask you a question about, the owners themselves of these cars. Do you work with them at all in trying to acquire sponsorship or giving like, like small group classes almost for them? Because we've interviewed so many of these smaller owners. And the biggest problem for them is it's not getting their equipment there to the track or anything like that. It's running a race with sponsorship. How can you help those people?
Right. One of the things that we do every year, and we're going to do it again at Daytona, is we have a PR and owners meeting, and we go over some of the things that we can offer to them to help them put their programs together and sell. One of the issues we have as a series is we can't show favoritism. We can't say, hey, we'll help this team, but not that team and things like that. But at the same time, we do try to, when somebody has a sponsor, they'll call us and say, what are some of the tools that you have available? Obviously, through the networks, there's in-car cameras, things like that. We have some things that we can add top spin to them if they wanted to entitle a race at the same time as they're sponsoring a car. And in some ways, people will say, well, that's taking money out of the team's pockets. Well, but in other ways, it's also adding the top spin to the whole program and giving what those companies are looking for, and that's a return on their investment. One of the things that we will do is we'll just help them in certain areas that we can help them in. point them in the right direction. But it's up to them. But I think everybody that knows me knows that it's at the same time it's an open door policy. If you have a question, I'll try to give you an answer as best as I can to help you sell your program. And we want competitive cars on the track, and we want competitive programs on the track, and that's what makes a healthy series. We can't show favoritism to one team or another, but at the same time, if somebody asks us a question, we'll answer it for them. We'll answer it for them and see what we can do to make it go. So,
yeah, it's just going to make our sport stronger.
Right.
If these guys can, put a team together. I mean, we've been talking to a number of, Mike Harmon, Mike Hill. We've been talking to, of course, Lauren. They work so hard on their equipment because they're the smaller teams.
Right.
But then, like Lauren was saying, it's, I need another 7 hours in the day,
it's
to get
very
this
true.
together. Yeah. And
what about, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say one of the hardest things too is you're putting sponsorship together is to do it on the lower series because you don't have live TV all the time. We'll have live TV, for instance, for 10 races, but for instance, in the K&N program, I think they maybe have 1 or 2 live races this year. The rest are taped. So it's just hard to get your position and get your dollars in order because sponsors need a return on their investment. And they're going to need their return on investment either in sales, right, or exposure, or realistically a combination of the two. So you've got to find maybe a customer or a new customer for them or a couple of customers for them that they can sell that only the race team is able to bring that to them, and also help them with some of their branding initiatives when they're trying to move into a new area, for instance, a new area in the country. How can we tie the race program in to help that happen? And this is where show car programs come in handy. This is where an in-car camera comes in handy to where you have some guaranteed exposure space on your driver inside that car. And this is where bringing new partners as far as distribution channels go for a company and bringing those people back possibly in a hospitality program at the racetrack helps in sales as well. So you've got to be creative. You got to think outside the box. It's not any easier anymore. TV rates, for when you're looking at all programming, has been declining because more and more people are using their phone as a way to view things, races. You've got Netflix. You've got so many different channels that take people away from the normal viewing. How do you bring them back in and be able to get your message for a company out to those people? Luckily, live sports still works.
That actually brings me up. My question I wanted to ask you is about social media. I mean, social media is huge. Definitely has changed the face of NASCAR. Now I sort of see not a decline in social media, but perhaps a change in social media. As a director of marketing and PR, how do you incorporate social media into your plans for the future?
That's a discussion we're having right now, and being with some of the clients that we have on board, their social media digital marketing programs are new to them. They hadn't really started anything, and I think sports in general, with the exception of some of your newer sports, have been slow to absorb social media. At the same time, social media the platforms that you use for those, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, are changing and maturing, and people are bouncing between all three and maybe leaning towards, say, Instagram. Or in some of the areas of the country, it's now looking at Instagram, but other areas it's more Twitter. And Facebook's kind of the old gray man on the podium there as far as social media. So it becomes very difficult to measure those and bring those in to the full of what you're doing for your whole media marketing campaign and to show value back to your sponsors with those programs. And the thing that you have to weigh out, social media is great, I think, for keeping your message going forward. But when you're looking at helping a company out to ask for the sale and a call to action, it may not be the best avenue to do that, to bring sales in. And that's the trick, is how do you bring sales in, bring that person into your facility through social media, keep it looking genuine and not like it's a sales presentation you're giving them, and yet achieve your goals on the inside. So for any company, including a race team, it's a very difficult balance. It's a changing, evolving marketplace. You have to stay up on it, stay educated. And I'm going to tell you, what we decide to do for a plan for 2016, I'm going to guarantee you is going to be antiquated by 2018 or 19.
Absolutely.
And that's how quickly it changes. And you really have to keep up on it. And for me, who's an older guy, it's even more challenging.
Hey, don't give me that. I just said to Marie, my 80-year-old dad is iPadding like mad. So I don't bite that.
Well, no. It is a transition though. It's because I grew up on print. I grew up in the LA area, Los Angeles, California area, and I used to read Jim Murray in the sports every morning and with the LA Times, and that's one of the few papers that still is in circulation in a major city. But for the most part, newspapers are gone.
It's a different world.
Don't exist anymore. You get some weeklies here and there that'll get delivered for free to you, but other than that, that's about it. And that's impacted a lot of industries. I know we go back to companies like Procter & Gamble, it's really impacted them on how they get their couponing out, because they've depended on that for years. It was a no-brainer that your Sunday paper, you're going to have your flyers to your Krogers, to your Targets, to whatever supermarkets in your area. It's going to be in there for Procter & Gamble products, and that's changed. For all your retailers and for all your folks that put products out there. So how you get out to your customers, that's where social media is coming, and that's a trick. If you can develop clear, concise campaigns that can pay off for you and drive your traffic in through the store, that's the trick. And some people are doing it, and others are still learning about it, and we're kind of in between that right now.
It's interesting because I have all of my daughter, as well as my nieces and nephews, they are all huge sports fans. They're all between 20 and 26 years of age. Not one of them has a television set.
Right.
Not one. They don't. They're all either at college or they're living in apartments now. I asked my daughter last night when we were visiting together, I asked her, do you want any access to any of this stuff? She said, no, I get it as I go along. And I said, can you define that for me? And she said, well, yeah, I use your Amazon, I use your Netflix. I said, how does that help you with sports? And she said, you know what it does, Mom? It compacts it for me.
Right.
And that's how she views it. She said, so I just don't have 3.5 hours for an Eagles game. I just don't. And I think if I asked her that about a race, even though she knows I just love it, she would say, can it be compacted down?
Wow.
I know, but the thing is, and what happens now when we have all these people that are maybe even under 30 crowd? I'm not sure it goes that high, but that's what we're sort of facing with our broadcasting of the races, I think.
Yeah, and how does a marketing guy deal with that?
Well, going to have to. Sometimes your market is, a lot, and most often your market is decided by your client. And if they choose to view your programming off the small screen, then you better get pretty darn good at putting it out on the small screen. Well, and that's the challenge for everybody.
Here's
I know.
Here's
Go ahead.
a perfect example of that. The Rolex. Okay. It's running right now, the 24 hours of Rolex. It's not on any Canadian television anywhere. I'm watching it right now while we're doing this interview on my computer. And I've been watching
Right.
it all day long. And I leave it on there. I get up, I go do stuff, whatever. And I'm not a 20-something person. But we all have, as a marketing guy, this has got to be a real challenge for you, is how do you, and we've asked some of our other guests this, how do you engage that younger market that is all about instant gratification? My thing personally on this was, how did we all get to be race fans? Well, our parents took us to the races, and it was a big deal, right? It was a big adventure. It was family time, blah blah blah. That world doesn't even exist anymore. I mean, you went to university, you've got your degree in marketing and PR and all that, but even now that's probably obsolete as to where things are today. It's changing so rapidly.
Right, and that's the challenge. But you have to call upon good people, and that's what one of the things I've always learned. Anything you're doing in marketing is that no one knows everything, and you have to call upon good people that are doing some good things and see how are they doing it and getting the results that they're getting it, and can you incorporate what they've learned into your programs. It's one of the things that we're working on internally right now. I've got a relationship with a pretty good company that has turned some corners in digital marketing, and they've been kind enough to, because they're race fans, it's amazing what the power of the pit pass can do, because they're race fans. They've been nice enough to talk to us and give us a little bit of information on how we may be able to improve our digital strategies. And so we're working through that right now. That's one of the biggest challenges, and I call it the small screen. We as marketers, and this is for everything, not just racing, we have to be able to market through the small screen. I think the NFL was taken aback when they combined Fox Sports with Yahoo to do one of the games they had at Wembley Stadium, and I can't remember who was playing, but the only way you could get the game was on streaming. And I remember because we were at, I think we were at Texas when that game was being played, because all of the guys had, on their phone, they were watching the NFL game at 7 a.m. that was being played over in England. And as we came in through the garage, once we got everything done, I know all the drivers were, but we had it on one of the computer screens that's usually scoring and timing, had the football game on. So the results that they said they had from that was that, and this included some international, but still was pretty good, that 15.2 million people watched that broadcast while streaming. And I think that took a lot of people by surprise. But it's not that surprising when you look at things overall. Many shows are losing TV ratings, but are you really losing ratings? I don't think so. I think people are still viewing them. The hard thing is it's harder to measure who's watching it through what we've used through Nielsen and some of our other TV ratings. How do we measure the person that's watching on their phone, their smartphone? And that's the trick right now, is coming up with a way to make sure that you're reaching your audience through some sort of measurement that you can bring back to your clients, because all budgets and marketing programs are designed by measured marketing input, and you've got to be able to quantify what you're putting out there for a product, and that's a big challenge right now. But there's companies that do it. We utilize, for instance, Meltwater, that does a lot of digital. They track a lot of your digital marketing, and that's been very helpful, and we've seen a big shift. I'm going to say with our own website, we've seen a shift now, but I'm going to say, depending on who you measure it through, but anywhere between 27 and 37% of our audience in ARCA that comes and watches our timing and scoring, they used to watch it on the computer, on their laptop. They're now watching it on their phone, and that's happened in the last 9 months.
Right.
So again, it presents challenges for us on how do we present our product to look at a small screen. And I always find this ironic because everybody goes out and buys the biggest TV they can, but they end up watching on the smallest screen they can.
You got
I watch
to their
Arc on
programming anymore.
I watch
Go
Arc
figure.
on it. Yeah.
You got to fix that Arca website. That should be one of your main goals. That is so frustrating.
It is, and we just hired Casey Wagner and Katie Lerke to they come on board, and both of them are young, so they're keyed into how things work.
Good.
And Katie's worked very hard over the last couple of weeks, even before she got hired. Her second day on the job, she gave me a 25-page. This is what we need to fix on the website.
Oh my God!
And,
I could give you
which
that.
I love.
Yes.
I love. I gave her a big hug because she's really taking ownership of it with Casey, as we all are.
That's awesome.
And so we understand that we have to fix it, and no fault to anybody. It's just been we're a small group, a small series, and we go out and put on race shows, but we have to be cognizant of what we have to do for our customers as well on things. And we're going to work real hard to get that taken care of and make it a better website that people will be very attracted to, and something that everybody can be proud of. And it's no fault of anybody there. They've had it. I think it's just a matter of that. It's just one of those things where everybody's worked hard to put on the race shows and put on what we've had to do. But now, as you become more electronically engaged with your race fans and your customers, you have to have a website that works interactively with them to work on the small screen. And everybody knows it. We've talked about it, and we're going to chip away at it with our partners that we have that run it, and I think we'll end up with something that everybody will be happy with. So give us a little time. We'll by June or July we'll have it, I think, to something that we can really roll out and everybody will be proud of.
I'm sure.
That's great.
Yep. That with the ARCA, I mean, you basically summed it up right there. You were a small series, but social media and the internet has brought your racing to the forefront. And perhaps, and I see this in a lot of racers, in race teams, race groups, race series, whatever, that they haven't kept up with the times, right? Like all drivers should be active on social media. That's a given. And yet I see repeatedly that they're not. When we interviewed Mike Harmon the other day, I was laughing because his website is under construction. Come on, man. People want to go and be able to easily find the information they want because they're all like, go, 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 go. There's no time to sit back and chill and relax. You need to find, like Maureen said about her daughter, she's a perfect example of society today. We're old farts. We're used to kind of waiting and, okay, they'll get to it eventually. And with the ARCA website particularly, I just got frustrated and stopped following it because it drove me nuts. But, I understand that is, people are having to focus. People like you are coming along and saying, hey, you've got to be there for people that need it instantly. Drivers, you got to be more online, you got to be more around, you got to learn how to talk properly on camera, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's a whole package instead of the guys who just want to go out there and race cars. And the bottom line is those guys just want to go out there and race cars.
But that's their reward. But you have to remember, we have a tremendous sport, and it's very competitive. But it also is entertaining, and that's the key word. We are really anymore in the entertainment business. Mm-hmm. Sports is now taken on as equal as movies. When you're looking at ratings and rollouts, hey, look at Star Trek. Star Trek, great movie. Everybody went to see it. But those movies come every couple of years where everybody goes to see them. Look at the Denver Broncos game with the New England Patriots. 55 million households were viewing that game, so in one evening. And that's when you look at your sports programming, live programming, that's at least by the month you'll get good ratings, but that's a weekly occurrence that you're having tremendous ratings out there. And it's just, you have to understand that you're really in the entertainment business now, and you have to keep it fresh and make it entertaining, yet still run a show that is proper and safe, and safe for the fans and safe for the competitors, but still puts out the product that you're looking to put out. And ARC has worked really hard, and the rules that they've done with it, the engine program's a tremendous value for the competitors, and it's done a great job for the series to tighten up the field. And, it was not well received. It was a big gamble on their part, absolutely a gamble.
It was.
And it took them a while to get it formulated to its present form. It's kind of funny. You'll start out with something, and so many times this happens in racing and in life, what you perceived as a concept that something will be will morph into something else by the time you get done. And sometimes it's about supply and availability. But that engine, from where it started and where it ended up, it's just tremendous. And it's all bolt-on pieces that exist. And I never would have thought that pieces that you could get, they're basically you could buy anywhere and bolt on or bolt together, would go into an engine that would run 1,500, recommended 1,500 miles before you rebuild it. Some of the competitors have put on to 2,000 miles, which nobody recommends, but they've done it. But you could run that engine from Salem to Daytona or Talladega, and it works and it lives. And I think that's a tremendous accomplishment by all of our partners that put that Ilmor engine together, and all the pieces with Holley and all that they've done, their parent companies, and all that Ilmor did. When you have a partner that's just understands race engines, and Dave Dixon, who just recently retired, he really spearheaded that effort internally at Ilmor. Just a tremendous engine mind. He put together a competitive piece that is really reasonable on the cost end, and has really helped this series and the competitors all involved. So it's just amazing. It's amazing.
Well, I know the truck series is going after the same thing now. They're looking at, right, they're trying. And I think they looked at ARCA and said, well, wow. I mean, if they've done it, we could do it too, and make it cost effective and yet a much better race. So I heard maybe Kentucky they would have it by. We'll see. That's
when they're going to try to have it, I hear. And that's always the challenge, is that at the same time, we've been able to, our partners we have with the composite body and with the Ilmor engine, and, we have contingency sponsorship that comes in, support from Ford and from Toyota. And hopefully one of these days from Chevrolet, if they're listening. And they've been receptive to it. It's always hard on the NASCAR end because of the Cup, and those nameplates are so important. And there's so much pride that goes into what their engineers and their companies do in the big series to put out the product they put out, which is engines and cars, race engines and cars. And that's the challenge that NASCAR will have in putting a spec engine, is how do we keep our three big partners involved and make them feel like satisfied with the product, at the same time what we're trying to do to keep the cost down for the competitors so we can put on a better show and have more of them. And that's a very difficult balance, and I don't know what the answer is on that. I know they're going to try very hard on this. Truck Series is a perfect series to try it on.
What do you think of that 20-minute time clock in the trucks?
It's different. It's going to be interesting. I don't know how much it'll affect the outcome of the races. I think that a lot of the races usually have a yellow before the 20 minutes, but boy, I'll tell you what, there's been a couple of times when I really hoped there was a caution. There's an old saying in racing. There's an old saying in racing that, if you hope you're a caution, you end up being the caution.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
So that may take some of that out of it. you actually end up with a caution. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. I think it just adds a little uniqueness to it. And, of course, everybody says, why are they doing that? I think it just helps, spruce up the show a little bit. Let's see where it works out. Let's see where it works out. I know the TV people will be happy because that essentially would be a TV timeout for a commercial. So at least they can plan on it. You know. But and you have that. You have that in the NFL. You've got TV timeouts. I don't know if people realize that.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
I'm just learning to watch football thanks to Maureen because I've got nothing to do in the off season. It drives me nuts. So I've been learning football. So I'm a football virgin, so to speak.
Yeah, you're doing really well, Shen.
It's pretty hard to say that when you're over 50 that you're a virgin again. But anyway, I'm learning football and I'm learning about these TV timeouts. And somebody said about this time clock, they said, I hope they're going to have cabs to take everybody home because if they're going to throw a caution every 20 laps, people will be down getting beer and blah, blah, blah. Everybody be tanked at the end of the race.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at some of the races, I think it won't affect it too much. I think usually for the Truck Series, you're ending up with a caution like every 17 or 18 minutes, so which you don't realize, but a lot of those places, that's 30 or 40 laps. Heck, you go to Bristol, that's 60 laps in, so.
I call it the Kyle Busch caution. Because when he's running the race, he gets way out ahead, and it's like boring. Okay, Kyle Busch has almost lapped the entire field now. Let's throw a caution.
Oh, yeah, and it's fun. It was funny because I used to spot for him at the second races when Jeff Dickerson was spotting for him. So I used to spot for him at Watkins Glen, be the second spotter there and at Indy. And, Kyle would get a lead every now and then. He says, it's about time for a caution. And he'd just about call it right.
Yeah.
He got pretty good at it.
That's true. That guy's got we talked about amazing talented drivers. There's one right there.
Oh, yeah. And in NASCAR's defense, there usually was a piece of debris somewhere. But it was just funny how it would work out. He'd call it, and sure enough, it would come out. We'd all get a chuckle. You know?
And I'd hear that on his radio. I flip sometimes around to the different radios, and I listen to him for a while. And I've heard him say that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's pretty intuitive. He is. He is. But I think it's more length and something happens in the length of the in between cautions, and usually there's something there. Those guys get blamed for a lot, but there's usually something there.
Oh, come on. I've been at my own track where a guy's gotten out in the lead, and all of a sudden a caution will fly, and the truck will go over there and block the view from the fans, and he'll get out, and damn well there's nothing there.
Oh yeah.
I just call them boredom cautions. We need to get up and go to the washroom and maybe go get a hot dog and another beer, and then everybody loves restarts, right? I mean, who doesn't love a restart?
Exactly, and they are pretty dang exciting.
They are.
They are. I think this could really help.
Yep. Yeah. I was kind of when I first heard it, I was like, "What the hell are you guys doing? You're manipulating the races." But you know what? They've been manipulating the races as long as racers have been racing. So
exactly,
it really isn't any different. They're just trying to keep the excitement level up, and I give them credit for that. And I'm certainly willing to give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. I don't get truck races up here anyway. I have to watch them on a very sketchy website that half the time I can't get. So, I don't know how much I'm going to see of them. But, truck racing is one of my favorites. I really enjoy it. And we'll have to see. We'll have to see how that goes. But, we've had just a great time talking to you. And you've added so much insight into so many different aspects of racing that people don't quite understand, and for that, I know Maureen and I both feel the same way. It's always good to tell people that stuff because they don't have a clue. Right,
and there's so much that happens behind the scenes to putting a race effort together. I mean, what everybody sees is the car on the track and the driver, and that's it, and they don't realize the traveling roadshow that goes behind it, the support group. I mean, every race team it's a trucking company. I mean, there's so many different hats you wear. Remember, it was at the PRI show, and Brad Keselowski, who had just, he's a great young driver that came up through the hard ranks. And he was talking about when you're a race team, how many different hats you have to wear. You're an employment company, an employment agency. You're an engineering department. In a lot of ways, you're a manufacturing department because of what you're doing, hanging the bodies and everything you put together on the cars and the engines. You're a trucking company, as well. There's just so many different elements that go into a race team and a race organization that people don't realize. And I'm going to say 85% of your races are won or lost in the shop, and the quality of the people you have. And it's not only the quality, it's whether they're just in sync or not. And it's what I'm telling you, when it goes well and you're winning races, guys that, a lot of times the shops are open at 7. Heck, when you're winning races, they're there at 5:30 or 6. They're putting in extra time because they want to win that next one. It's a wonderful thing. And when it's going bad, it's probably the ugliest thing you ever want to be involved with. And if you're in racing, you've always been involved with good times and bad times. And the one thing you understand is that the good times, when things are going bad, the good times will roll back around if you work hard enough. And when it's going good, you always know you better take advantage of it now because there's always that slump. So it's an incredible sport, and there's just so much that it takes to put one on. And I have so much respect for all the people that are involved in it because of what they have to do to make it go. You don't take a job in racing to take a job. You take it because it's going to be a lifestyle. And you better accept that when you do that, and most people do, and it consumes them and their whole family, and I just, for all the efforts they put in, it's tremendous, and just have a lot of respect for anybody that's in the business, no matter what end of the business they're in, because it is a commitment.
Oh, I agree. There's just so many parts to this whole story that you've mentioned a lot of them. I guess that's all comes under your umbrella now. All of this.
It does. It does in the sense of, now that I'm working for the series, this is, I've never worked for a series before, and this is the first time. So it's a tremendous challenge. ARCA is a great series. What a rich history. 64th year. And, a lot of champions have come out of this series and done very well all the way up through Cup. When you look at Benny Parsons over the years, look at Chris Buescher recently, but go back and look at the drivers that have won. All 3 of NASCAR's champions competed and won races in ARCA. Kyle Busch did. Chris Buescher, right, obviously won the championship. Eric Jones did. If you go back and look at your starting lineup last year in the Cup field, look at all the drivers that had come up through ARCA, whether it be Ryan Newman, whether it be Justin Allgaier, whether it be Alex Bowman. All the way through, you can sit there and I'm going to say close to half the field have run races in ARCA.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's a tremendous stepping stone up to the bigger series. I'm just happy now that I'm going to be able to be a part of the series and watch some of these young drivers, the future Jeff Gordons, the future Tony Stewarts coming up through the series, and have a chance to see them grow and mature and be ready for the top series as their careers grow. And that's exciting.
It's an awesome job. It's got to be an awesome job.
I'm blessed.
And how many weeks are you on the? Are you going to be traveling with the series this year?
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, 20 races, which to me, I don't. They're afraid I'm going to become bored because last year, between Jay had put that truck team together, and we put that team together in 6 weeks. Went out and sat on the front row at with John Munson, crew chief, and it sat on the front row with Travis Guapo behind it. So that was a tremendous project. But I spotted almost 90 races last year, and I did all but one truck race travel to. I did all but one Cup race, and then I did with Derek Cope, I think 28 Xfinity races. And I did some ARCA races and a couple of K&N. So I was about 90 races last year. To be only doing 20 events and focused on one event, I'm going to have to take up fishing or golf or something, I think, for the off time. gonna have to do something because I'm afraid I won't know what to do, on the off time. But they keep me pretty busy there. I'm sure Ron Drager and Mark Gunderman all will find something for me to do, between races.
Would you? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you're in your 50s, are you not?
Yes, I am. Oh yeah.
So would you call your career, which has spanned a lot of different series and a lot of different things, would you call that a happy, good, successful career? Is that everything you dreamed of? What were the highs? What were the lows?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. The highs, I think, are working with drivers like Chris, and then I've had the opportunity to work with when I worked with Kyle Busch. That was pretty nice for doing those races with Jeff, even though it was twice a year. It was just neat we went to Victory Lane at Watkins Glen, which is the only time I've ever been in Victory Lane on the Cup side, and just to see what a commitment that was for those guys to do that, and to work with a driver like Kyle. I mean, he's one of those athletes that just purely get into the zone. They have another 3/10 in them that just comes out of nowhere. And he's just one of those drivers that can do that. Turn that switch on when he's being pressured and pick up an extra 2 or 3/10. I'll never forget, Jimmy Johnson was closing in on him, and that's when Steve Addington was crew chiefing for Kyle and kept filling him in on who's coming. And then all of a sudden, Kyle got 3/10 out of nowhere, and he was in such a zone. Addington was giving him lap time, saying, "Wow, best lap yet." 111 something and whatever. And caution came out, Kyle caution. But Kyle said, "Hey, Steve, what did you say to me?" He was so far in the zone, he blocked out everybody, didn't hear anyone. When he looked and he saw that Johnson was in the mirror and about 10 feet back, it was like an afterburner came in out of nowhere. Same car. And it's not like he was holding back. I mean, he had it hung out. I mean, I was down in the bus stop, and I mean, he ran her off the grass. I mean, tires were chirping, and I mean, it was on edge for about 8 laps straight. And Jimmy couldn't get to him, and it's just, there's those drivers. You see it in Jimmy Johnson. I think that movie Made at Texas where he passed on the outside in the last lap, they're incredible. There's just, when they smell a victory and they know they got to turn it on, they've got an extra 2 or 3/10 in them. And that's just something you can't teach. It's inherent in them. And that's what separates the good drivers, the great drivers from the good drivers, is being able to turn on that afterburner internally and just pick it up when they need to. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. Those have been the good points. Down points, Daytona 2 years ago, I was spotting for Nemo Gidley when he got severely hurt. And looking back, there's nothing I could do. But, you always take pride in when you're on the spotter end of it, in getting your driver around wrecks and through wrecks. And that was one where it was probably the worst timing ever was. The guy that had broke his axle and lost all his power, and he stopped right in the middle of the track.
Right.
And as a spotter, you're looking forward, you're going back. And what had happened was, at that time, Nemo was running about second. We got run off the track going into one by one of the slower cars, got loose and pushed us in the gravel going into one, and he spun and went back to about fourth. And I know Nemo, he was pretty excited at that point. And he was running lap times that were the fastest of the race, and he had the sun in his eyes through that portion of the track, and we were coming back and passing those guys that had passed us earlier in the last couple of laps. And I remember looking ahead and seeing that there were slower cars coming. I told him there's a slower car ahead of you. Looked back to clear him off the hairpin there in the infield. When I looked back, the car was stopped and, went to key him to stay right, but the car he was getting ready to pass went right. I think Nemo thought he was giving him the bottom lane, and there was a car stopped right there, and he hit him at 160 miles an hour at a dead stop. And, fortunately, he was severely injured, but fortunately he survived the wreck. But that was a low point because you know that if you're in racing long enough, you're going to have a serious incident that you're directly connected to, whether you're doing PR for a team or whether you're actually spotting for somebody. And those are the days you do not look forward to in racing. They're there, you don't get consumed by them, but it still is a day that it hurts when it happens. And, for me, it was a lot of reconciliation in the sense of what could I have done different. Looking back, I don't know if I ever could, but you still feel a sense of responsibility because that's your driver, and you're giving him all the information he needs to do what he needs to do. And when they get hurt, you take it personal, and it's a lesson learned in some ways. And thank goodness, Nemo's around, and he's getting around pretty well, and hopefully he'll be able to get back in a car again someday because I know he wants to, and that would be the best therapy. But those are the long down days. I'll tell you what, I spent a couple of hours in the Daytona infield doing a little soul searching. So those are always the hard days.
I bet that's got to be tough. I can only imagine. I mean, you no matter what your common sense tells you, you still feel a sense of responsibility. What haven't you done yet that you'd like to do?
In racing?
Yeah.
Wow. I've done a lot. I'd love to get back in a car.
Yeah. Well, that's where I was going with that.
Yeah. I mean, I laugh about it though. My brother, and I'm not being prejudiced, he was actually a really good race car driver. But he couldn't tell you a dang thing about what the car was doing, and that's where I learned how to work on race cars and make them go fast. Was standing down in the corners and watching his car and helping him. And then, I raced go-karts for a lot of years. Got to race against Scott Goodyear and Scott Pruitt and some other guys, and I did all right. And never got a chance to really race cars too much other than some hot laps here and there. Had some fun. Got to run at Ascot in hot laps, which was very fun. Very famous half-mile track in Gardena, California. But I'd love to get back in, but I laugh because, I tease my brother all the time. He sails now, and he's a really good, sailor. And I said, well, that's the only cockpit that we can fit in anymore. It's the cockpit of the boat.
Squeezing through that window could be tricky.
Yeah, I said the windows got bigger, or the windows got smaller, and I got bigger, But then the other side of the coin is, as long as Mike Harmon has a seat, I always know I can fit somewhere in a race car. So, I tease Mike on that. I said, Mike, you're the biggest gymnast I know because you can get in and out of that window, and he does, and he's for the passion of it, and he still gets up on the wheel. So I'd love to get back in, not at any level. It's more now for satisfaction. I'm past the point of knowing that I could be a competitive driver, but I'd love to go run some road course stuff, SCCA, and that may be something. I've got another friend of mine that used to run that. We've been talking about maybe on some of these off weekends we might put a car together and go out and have some fun and run some road courses. And now it's more for pure enjoyment for the sport and being at speed than it is to be. I mean, we'll go and do the best we can to be competitive, but it's not going to be all consuming. It's more to go have fun and love to be a weekend, do a little weekend racing here and there, wherever I can.
Once you're a motorhead, you're always a motorhead. It never really goes away. It doesn't matter how old you are.
Hard to get out of the system. And my brother, he was the first one to call me. Oh, now you're not going to be gone every weekend. Let's go put a dirt car together. So, yeah, okay. So, and unfortunately, he'll probably talk me into that. So we'll see. I'll be doing some, I'm sure I'll be doing some racing here and there on the side. And I've got another friend that lives up here, Herb Wright. Herb grew up in Southern California, and his dad bought all of my go-kart equipment when I got out of racing and gave it to Herb to run, and I helped Herb out. Well, the funny thing is that, you go 30 years down the road, 30 years plus, and Herb's out here, and he races dirt late models now. And so he's been on me to come out and help him again. So, here I did. I helped him on go-karts. Now I'll go out on the weekend here and there and help him on the dirt late model. And I'm looking forward to that. That'll be fun. So we'll do some of those. But, yeah, if I could get behind the seat again for just a little bit, that would be the icing on the cake. It really would be.
Well, I'll tell you something. We're interviewing Morgan Shepherd on Monday, and I could hardly wait to hear him because he's been in this seat, right? And he's well into his 70s, so
Oh, in great shape too.
Oh,
You know.
it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, I really want to thank you for this interview. It's been hilarious and very enlightening. I wish you all the luck in your new job, and I do hope
Thank you. I appreciate it, Jim.
I do hope you get out there in that car, whether it's a midget or a go-kart or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. But
Well,
you'll have fun.
If my Carmen has a seat missing out of his garage, you'll know what happened. So,
Yeah, and we'll be watching.
there you go. Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much for having me on tonight. And,
Thanks so
anytime.
much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well-
And go Eagles.
Yeah, Maureen's
Exactly.
she's a huge Eagle fan, so
Oh.
I'm sure she appreciates that.
Oh
Yes,
yeah, love the Eagles.
Well,
You know.
thanks again, Tom. God, it's been great fun, and of course, thanks to Buddy for setting it all up as always. He's our
Yeah.
guy.
Oh yeah, Dick is. He's a tremendous young man. Always a pleasure to speak with him. I always look forward to seeing him at the races. Hopefully, I get a chance to this year as well.
Well, we just sent him to Bristol, so hopefully you'll see him over there.
Heck yeah, looking forward to it.
And I'll see you in Daytona because I'll be down there.
Do not be a stranger. Track me down.
I will.
You've got all my numbers, so
I will.
track me down. I look forward to seeing you there. Whatever I can do for you there, let me know.
I will. Thank you very much, and thanks again,
All right.
Tom. Good night.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Tom.
Take
That's
care.
great.
Good night.
We hope you've enjoyed hanging out in the Happy Hour Garage. Thanks for tuning in. Please join Shannon and Maureen next week for another episode of NASCAR news, interviews, and stories. Check out our website at www.happyhourgarage.com for our previous shows and see what's coming up next.